Okay, so we do prostration. Namo manju shri Namo su shri Namo Dhamma shri Soha. Namo manju shri Namo su shri Namo Dhamma shri Soha. Namo manju shri Namo su shri Namo Dhamma shri Soha.
上节节到昨节上那了，讲究跑到大年家中节，大概就别做那，若那边叫上节都跑，说上节就到昨节就那了，讲究跑到大年家中节，大概就别做那。若那边叫上节都跑，说上节就到昨节就那了，讲究跑到大年。大概就别做那件，若那边叫上节都跑，说上节别就前面都找理解人家就上节现到面对不过，人着给拿到现了就跑，说也当过着人那面找那个那样大。有的，东亚的那些就得到汤，就大概程度嘛，那些个人情况下当妈妈些把记着，妈些把了长期没就把你们，真正就嘛的那台湾的叫浪到国内基本个东亚把些，你话呢，第一个基基叫么都真正就嘛的那，第几批次做把它拆了，这么拆把结局，拆把小，两边都是想嘛，我说是。
Yeah, all sentient beings have been our mothers, and they have been our mothers for numberless times. Their kindness to us is exactly the same as the mothers of this life. All kind mother sentient beings, though they want happiness and do not want suffering, but they do not know the object of abandonment and object of adoptions properly. Thus, they create only the karma that bring forth the result of suffering. In our minds, sincerely cultivate loving kindness towards all kind mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice if all sentient beings had happiness. May all sentient beings have happiness. I will cause all sentient beings to have happiness.
Di jisum dunga dina isimje deda tang chichi gosun jimun dibi chu tada da chana chimaru chawa chichi chawa dagi shao deda sheni wa lama la ishinji lo dosu ninji moshus.
Next, we cultivate compassion to all kind mother sentient beings, thinking, how nice if three doors of all kind mother sentient beings were free of all adversities. May three doors of all sentient beings be free of all adversities. I will cause three doors of all sentient beings to be free of all adversities. Lama, please bless me to be able to do so.
Di jisum dunga jina isimje deda tang chin kowa da ngen sung dunga le do nge sila pongu do nge rang la po ja. Da di nega yang da wazubi sanji ji gongpa lang gibi nipa me da nipa de sila yosan yang da wazubi sanji la yobi. Desinje tangji jenda sanji ji gongpa rungpo ji jini ja toba shao nyambi changji ji sen gong shos.
Next, we cultivate bodhicitta towards all kind mother sentient beings. First, we ask ourselves who should take the responsibility to free all sentient beings from the sufferings of lower realms and from samsara. The answer is, I should take the responsibility to free all sentient beings from the sufferings of three lower realms and of samsara. But I do not have the ability for the time being to do so. Only those who have achieved the state of enlightenment have the ability to free all sentient beings from the sufferings of three lower realms and of samsara. Therefore, for the sake of all sentient beings, by all means, I want to become Buddha.
That is Domban Jitana Chusang Tansh. That da Pumbo the Rangi Chida Tate Kanda Yama to be Rangi to be Tonga Satu San Tanshus.
Next, we meditate on emptiness, that I do not exist intrinsically one with the aggregates, nor different from the aggregates. Thus, I do not exist intrinsically.
That is Gunojiala Hinsen, Tanji the Sanji compatible day to the Dakanda. Don't be choosing and Yanni taking the genetics in Jalapemba doing Satus Guno Jesus.
Set motivation. For the sake of all sentient beings, I want to become Buddha. For this purpose, I'm going to receive the holy teachings and practice accordingly in order to benefit sentient beings.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Tanga the Dillery. O Casidirwa.
Nalamangi Vilora.
Nalamangi Vilodrua. Akanda Dirwa. Ma Yunsat Zawan about the Sadam Malo, Mani Bijiba, the Timidilo Itini. The Timidilo de la Yena, that Jishi Jenala Manga, but Tesson Washing Ayurwa.
Similar Yena.
Timichiba.
Oh.
Matsukasima Yunsat Dirwa. Ishitala about the Sadam Malo, Mani Bijiba, the Timidilo Itinisrwa. Sema Maniba. Timidilo de la Maye Takanda. Jihi the Yiji, Nala Manga, Tesson Loshi, the Ayurwa. Nano, that and the Sumba Nala Manga, Sumbatrua.
Yep. So today I'm going to begin with this awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained. So to recap, before we talk about this, then we talk about the valid consciousness and non-valid consciousness. So the definitions for a non-valid consciousness is a knower that is not newly incontrovertible. So this is the definition for a non-valid consciousness. And when this non-valid consciousness is divided, then it's divided into 5 subsequent cognizers, correctly assuming consciousness. And the third one is what I'm going to talk about today. Awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained.
What did you that Nala Mangi Logi Tini, Rangin Jude Giberanse, Sawa Nawai, Rangin Jude Giberanse, and a Bandrim Maniba and Bishintiba, Giberiba, Ranina Mangi Tini, it's in the Shandua.
So with respect to the third of the 5 types of non-valid consciousnesses, awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained, the definition of some things being an awareness to which an object appears without being ascertained is a knower that is a common locus of having clear appearance of the specifically characterized phenomenon that is its object of operation, in other words, object of engagement. Being unable to induce ascertainment with respect to the specifically characterized phenomenon that is its object of operation.
Oh, yeah, that is Rua. Takanda Nala Mangi below the Kanda Rangi in Juyu the Ransi Sawa Nawachi, Kanda Rangi Yu the Mangi Bachi, Rua, Rangi Yu the Mangi Bachi. Kanda Rangi 인주유데
주유로.
orang 인주유랑제 데 사와 나와치 사보 나그리 데 이나 니가 말해서 거다로와
Yep. So the definition for an awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained basically is a knower that has a clear appearance of the of its object of engagement. So this knower has a clear appearance, or the object, its object of engagement clearly appears to this knower but is not ascertained.
간다 디올에 ngazo de tseba chi yori da de tseba ma logina 간다 디즈 거다 저거마 된다 도도 되래 강릉 여번에 왕시 람도와 다 강릉 여번에 왕시 데 간다 디나라 망이블로 마레스 거다 간다 디 로와 나나 망이블로 마레스 데 간다 강릉 여번에 왕시 데 코치시로와 로시로와 로와 나나 망이블로 데다 간다 트시 마로와 만트시 바 인고라 만트시 바 다 강릉 여번에 왕시 데 트시로와 트시 마제 코 로시로와 다로와 어디선가 다들 제발로 신이들은 보죠. 다들 막 예고다 되고는 디진 트랙을 가보러와. 된다도 되려와. 강릉에 보나 왕시대 간다데 마레스 거라 나나 망이 별로 마레스.
Yeah, so then following there is some argument or a debate between it follows by a debate, but to talk about it, then it will confuse all of you. So what it means is, so this is because the sense consciousness that see a snow mountain as blue, see as blue the white color of the snow mountain, which is its object of operation, and therefore doesn't see clearly the specifically characterized phenomenon, which is its object of operation. So regarding this, the sense consciousness that sees a snow mountain as blue. So what it means is, this sense consciousness is not a consciousness, is not an awareness to which object appears but is not ascertained as blue. Sorry, but is not ascertained. Sorry. This sense consciousness is not an awareness to which object appears but is not ascertained, because this sense consciousness is a mistaken consciousness. It is a wrong consciousness. So it is not an awareness to which object appears but is not ascertained.
디올라 간다 나라 망이 별로기 신시가 보데 데병아서 배찬을 가신 누르와 로리드는 가신데 참아 디즈 고단 트랙가 디즈로와 간다 고용연 본통아 만도 나베 태선 레바시비 응원지 왕봉에서다 소소 지워지지 대한집이 이년다 대냥스네 랑리세 디소다 신시 샤자로와 나라 망이 신시 샤데 이노 디소다 디세 고단 트랙 디즈 갈래 가버리 니 고단 디즈 트랙 대안도 고치 담마 신시 샤드로와 고다 디즈 트랙 대와 든지 마시위 땅아서 배찬으로 디소 신시 샤르 디소 디즈 살롱 땅고나 디즈 갈래 가버요래.
Yeah, so even though illustrations, there are 3 illustrations of awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained are listed. However, it's listed in this text, also listed in other texts as well. So, like for example, the illustrations of this awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained is a sense direct perceiver apprehending blue that induces the doubt that wanders, did I see blue or not? Mental direct perceivers in the continuum of ordinary beings apprehending the 5 objects, forms, and so forth, and self-knowers experiencing those mental direct perceivers. So even though it's a common illustrations mentioned in this text and in other texts as well, but I find it it might be difficult for us to understand. So I will give you another example that is easier to understand.
다 나라 망이 불러데 지다 단다 가서 진짜네 슈피카라 지다 나라 망이 불러 단다 파치 이디야 인디 여여로와 나라 망이 받디 용용거라 맞으로와 답비 차샤바는 가서 이 대표 어로 이 순제 빠질라 하자 차신비 값지 로와 다이 순제 바라 하바 차신비 값소 대간다 로와 다 나이시바그 니히지 다 테바로와 니히지 펜디텐디 다 나와서 배 간다 서버나자 망이 바리에서 간다 다 님바 예 다들 참말마 샤는 지고 간다로와 다 로이시 간다 Yidra Nimbala Lab, Yizun Jepal Hapa, Chaji Picasso, take on the Danzi Nishigi, take on the Dradirwa, into Mariesor. That day, when it's in the Yerimazo, Jin Zinda Sobica Ina Tindicilla, that's also Sembate, Shendaji, Songi Shawari, Shenda Legachila Salon Tindicita, Tindici Sanole, Fuchambole, Shimbicala, Mansugi, and Zinda Vichina Tanda. Judge Kono Kodga, Seboji Kondish, Tanda Carlo Ime, Chinamawe, Yudua. Oh, that is so Nala Mangabanga, Danzini, Nala Mangibilo, Chawiori.
So the example for this awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained, like for example, when our mind is especially attracted to a beautiful form, then the sound that is apprehended by the ear consciousness, even though the sound appears clearly to the ear consciousness, but is not ascertained. So you do not, you hear something, but you do not know what it means. You do not know what is it saying. So that is an example for awareness to which an object appears, but is not ascertained because your mind is especially attracted to a beautiful form. And this is quite relevant here, especially when we are in class. So as I said, when we are in class, we are attending a Dharma class, then even though you are here, you are listening to you are hearing the sound of the teachings, but you do not ascertain what it means. You do not know exactly what is it talking about. So that is when your mind is distracted or especially attracted to something, like for example about your business, about your work. So when your mind is especially attracted to business or work, though you are attending the teachings, you are hearing the sound of the teachings, but you do not ascertain. So this is another example for this awareness to which object appears but is not ascertained.
Nala Mangibilo, the answer to in a demon Yuri. That's Sahan and Kalaji, Kalapetroya was shiver, you didn't Kalatilla, that drawing all that the Troya was shiver into the Telpe, Kala Troatilla, only Tanitilla Pachani. Dela, Haja Cha because Yashendakbina, kitchen of a shiver in a G corners, quarter, several quarter, Carlo Imengazo, Hamago with the new Woodwa. Or that indeed, did some of the other that be Shendajila my yin because of Haja yin because of then also Nahiji Datuala Nahiji Decos Nafidi of Nalamanga Chanagori or Gishiti Ro Continuum Deo Pachi Nalamanga Chanagori Roa. Or the Dipe Shibak one shake Nagalma to the Jaya Kanda. Yidi be Yi Shendajila yin the Wayona in the Yona. The day negas Tindi washing about the Zopin, Suzuki Yunzim, but the Penala Manga channels.
Yeah, so basically you can list out many different types of example, for example, many different examples. Then one of the example is when you go to a restaurant and you order yourself a very nice, very delicious food. So while you are enjoying the food, while you're enjoying this very delicious food, your mind is especially attracted to this delicious taste. Then when at the same time, another person talking to you. So at the same time, another person talks to you. So even though you can hear, even though the sound appears clearly to your ear consciousness, but you do not ascertain what the person is saying. So you do not understand what the person is saying. So this is another example. So basically, when your mind is distracted to something else, and at that time, then your five sense consciousness apprehending its object. Even though the object appears clearly to the sense consciousness, but is not ascertained. So even though, for example, the taste appears clearly to the tongue consciousness, but you do not know exactly what it tastes like, similar to smell, sound, etc.
That does answer Mambo Rua, that Nala Mangivelo, you that the song answer this half what they are doa. Tindi Nala Mangelo, the song answer this Kodan Trade Rua. That Kanda, Susa George is in that is so much shake this and trouble Rua. It's on trouble it is a Kodan Trade to Mari. That Jadang also Nala Mangivelo, so the Tanda day. In this Santa Marina, this Kodan Trade Rua. That also with Lega Carleva ina. 나라 망에 작은 도움도 소소 째받지나 하고도 그러와 그래서 그 내가 직관이 레벨에 내가 디기톨라 배 니츠기 선은 땅바나시 내가 돼 된다데 소소기 시기도 내기도 안 내고도 다 나라 망에 바이나 배 에로와 나라 망에 바이나 때 세보지 나와지 나와지 레바지 또 된다데 네 마토바 셈바데 신다 지란도 뭐 든지 차와이나 데간다 나라 망에 차와 다 딩아 속에 초하기 나서 냐뇽토네 두스레 나서 다 뭐마 진짜 게인트서 페티 마모도 사르와 페티 마모도 사데 참사나 게인기 트리아텔라 사노마 땅바치 트리찬조 신다지라 사노타 신다지 트리찬조 신다지라 데 토바지라 사노타 데 단다 카투 게 카트리아메 데 안초노 코르데 단다 추나 녜야 마리 단다 자와니 녜야 마리 다디 나라 망에 바 차사 로아 나라 망에 차사 데 단다 트리아데타 게인기 나마기 페 트리안조 페자 단디 단다 지라 사노타 게인기 페자 티비칼라 다 단다 카투 티비칼라 가르 카투 가르 트리아메 페다 세보 곤데아지라 단다데 망에 바치 오다 나라 망에 바스는 딘다고 당한테 장장 린데니 샤초그로와
Yeah, so just saying this as to give this as an example, for example, going to the restaurants or your mind is especially attracted to a beautiful form, then though you hear the sound but you do not ascertain it. So to give this as an example, for this awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained is easier for us to understand compared to, like for example, the second illustrations in the text. Mental direct perceivers in the continuum of ordinary beings apprehending the 5 objects, form, and so forth. So this is for for the time being is very difficult for us to understand. So compared to the example that I've given just now, so it's something that we can we can investigate or we can check. So while you're doing something, whether your mind is when your mind is focused on something or especially attracted to something. So when an object of five sense consciousness appears to you clearly, but you do not ascertain it, you do not ascertain it. So this also you can check, yourself whether this appears, this happens to you or not. So when we are in the monastery, then when the teachers is teaching giving the teachings, then though you are in the class, you are listening to the explanations, the sound appears clearly to your ear consciousness, but your mind is thinking something something the teacher taught before. So your mind is thinking something that the teacher taught before. So even though the teacher is teaching in front of the class, but you can hear clearly also, but you do not know exactly what the teacher is saying.
What did you tell? No, among you, but the Tachi is a Yashi on the that thing is so good. The Tatri no among you, but Chandwangene, Nimba Chandos. Now I'm not seeing into a new Mundusa, ditch about yet, with that indeed of Jiro.
Yeah, so the best place to check whether we have this awareness to which an object appears but is not ascertained is in class. So while you're in the class, then is the best time to check whether you have this awareness or not. So do we ascertain as it appears or not, as the object appears or not? Then yeah, this is the best time to check.
That is that or Tesson that Shiva Tesson the Mashuan.
So next is doubting consciousness.
That Tesson de la Kanda, Tesson with Sinide, that Ranto Jintanis to be rebutted Tesson Jinis a dish over.
Yeah, so the definition of a doubting consciousness is a knower that has qualms two-pointedly by its own power.
That Tesson my ear with the Katsina, the Anji Tenso, the Manji Tesson, Chanyong Tenso, the Sondua.
So when doubting consciousnesses are divided, they are 3: doubt tending toward the fact, doubt tending toward the non-fact, and equal doubt.
다 딜마 전주지 태송선의 간리지는 deputy world 신신도와 다 자다가 자 마다가 냐베 태송다고 다 간다들이 자다가 마다 다 패치 마다 냐베 태송다 전주지 태송을 해서 그러와 전주와 전을 춘주와지 전의 가르스나 자 마다바다 자 마다바 원이 순사 전대로와 자 마다바다 전시 자 마다바 마이바 자 따바디 전 마이바로와 자 taba this not term mai ban jin ro term mai ba san taro ja mata pala che san tang di de ja mata ba term bi ni ser ja di meta ba re de ro e de ro da dan da de term ji te song sa de da ta ga mata da pe chi mata ga nya bi te song de da term chen ji ga ge te song de kan da do de ro te song de re de ro da pe chi ta da mata ni no pe chi ta mata ba wo nya bi de te song de.
So doubt tending toward the fact. And then the example for this is doubt that thinks that sound is probably impermanent. So there is a doubt that thinks is sound impermanent or not. Then probably is impermanent. So such doubt thinks in that way is a doubt tending towards the fact, because the fact is the sound is impermanent. So when you think that sound is sound impermanent, then sound is probably impermanent. Then this doubt is doubt tending towards the fact, compared to if you have a doubt and then thinks that sound is probably permanent, then is a doubt tending towards the non-fact.
Oh, teacher, da ganji tesonji, da nimba, dan manji teson trendua. Da dela da jibare, da taga mata, nyambi teson no, peche tali che, peche ta nyambi teson tere, da taga mata, peche da tabare, sansa teson te, roa. Da de dan manju teson chawar, gazna, dan de da mata bare, da dan de la tsu manjuwa, dan mai ba da taba.
Yep. So the second one, doubt tending towards a non-factual. So the non-fact here is the sound is permanent. So sound is permanent is the non-fact. So if you have doubt that thinks that sound permanent, sound is probably permanent, then this doubt becomes a doubt tending towards a non-fact, because the fact is the sound is impermanent, and if you think that sound is probably permanent, then it becomes a doubt tending towards the non-fact.
다 다가 마타 아니면 대성들의 파진 조아지메다 찬용보라고 다 다데 따바이가 마타바이 사든디기 대성 산대야 되리다 간다. 좋아.
Yeah, so the third type of doubting consciousness is equal doubt. Then the example is doubt that wonders whether sound is permanent or impermanent. So you do not incline towards a fact or a non-fact. You just have a doubt that whether the sound is permanent or impermanent.
다 딜에 안가서 도반도 지디 지금도 알아. 다 태송세와 진이들아 랑도진 타미스 도베리바데 태송지 진이세 로도와. 오다디 로거리. 다디 로디 안가서 랑기 유라 도바. 랑이라 도바들라 태송 이고르베스. 다디 저반다 보신다 도바딜리고 랑기 유라 도바치. 로와. 다 랑기 유테페 엔디로와. 다 랑기 유라 베티 태송 이고르베스 리더시 잔디고. 로와. 다들이 조세 칼라야 보지 샤드나 다 칼라데 너무이가 주모이 데라 차 그래서 로아 차 휴치와 요이나 너무 휴치와 요이나 다 너무 휴치와 요이나 차 휴치와 요나 남이 데리 태송 요로아 차 휴치와 있는가 너무 휴치와 이 남이 데리 도바티 도바이지 바지로아 라 칼라데 베 너무 휴치와요나 차 휴치와요나 사들이 도바지야다. 어떻든지 도바데 도바데 태송 구글에 왜 세당 이 정도를 막 좋아시켜 그러다 로아. 도바들다 칼라
도바로.
도바데 칼라 때에 너무 휴체와 나가 차 휴체와 요나 냐비 도바디.
Yeah, so regarding this doubting consciousness, so now I am asking you, now I ask you a questions. So that has qualms with its object. Is this necessarily a doubt or not? So I repeat, that which has qualms with its object or with regard to its object, is this necessarily a doubt or not? For example, how's it there on top of the table there is a plate of food, and then you have qualms with regard to that food, whether the food is salty or is sweet. So these qualms with regard to the food being salty or sweet, is that a doubting consciousness or not? Yeah, you can unmute yourself and answer the question. Whoever. So such qualm is such qualm a doubt or not, a doubting consciousness or not?
Gishila, maybe I just try, because the definition is about having uncertainty about the two possibility or uncertainty, right? Doubt. So now we are uncertain about the taste of the food. So we cannot make conclusion whether they're salty or not, or the opposite. So it can be a doubting consciousness.
So yeah, it can be a doubting consciousness, right? 약간 있으나 대태성이 체이나 아니 타니수도 베 시바라 와이라. 타니수도 베 시바레. 아니 디양 가사 칼라라 아니 디양 디 차슈 첨부 요나야나 딩가모 요나 아니 디양 도바디 요장 아니 디 태성레스 태성인기레스.
나한테 태성이나 니 저런 밥배 시작으로 다 근데 조제가 빼 나서 추도 로아 에디시기 추도지기 다 간다 도르고라 헬라 님보지 핀로아 헬라 야보지 핀 조제 간샤나 다 저런 게 빼 헬라들라 땡아모 이내가 대 주부 휴체와나 근데 저런 게 도바사그라 사그 말이었어 저런 게
나모에나 규모로
대 칼라 땡아모 이내가 주모이나 내 도바데 저런 사그래가 말이었어
Yeah, so
sabi want tangorda kurang toba sabi want
sabi want ora
toba sabi want this aguro was chino toba dendi to sabi want tanga chita yoro dendi
so the toba sagiro was dendi right that's yeah, so you say that it is
ni toba sabi la ndio da kuna chona khala de ngamo yega jumo yi na be dendi chona ge toba yoro was chona de khala de la toba jibat de chona khala de la dendi toba jibat de
yeah, you say that it is doubting consciousness, right? So I give you so based on this, then I ask you, I further give you an example. So is that a doubting consciousness or not? So for example, LDC members or our Dharma friends, so offer you, Dr. Go, a food, and then put the food on the table. So when you look at the food, then you are having a qualms thinking that is that food sweet or salty, right? So is these qualms a doubting consciousness or not?
Yeah, I would think just now if doubting consciousness is defined as uncertainty on its true nature, the truth, then maybe, but when I look into the three division, then this sweet or not sweet does not go towards this classification, because it's not towards the truth, whether or not against the truth or equal doubt. So with the example Geshe-la gave about the food, whether it's sweet or not sweet, if we go further about the division 3, then it may not qualify into adopting consciousness.
那说，你看意思那的可是태송기 체이디 다제 이니디 도바디 요라 타 가자 망에 바 타마 주바데 요라 와이라 이니디 딜라타 가자 체이디 라테네 디 가자 태송이 바 이니디 랭캬바이 이네 양 태송라 예와이나 양 등규기 태송단 되미규기 태송단 찬야비 태송 숨 요라 와이라 이니디 칼라기 베디 샤와이나 ngamo감 디 가자 차감 근데 도바데 이니디 가자 대숨 낭로라 이와 숨디 낭로라 이니디 추야 요 말에서 추투기 말에서
디늘로 맞추기
뒤투기 말에서 뒤투기 말에서
이니디 뒤 도바사 요라 요 말에서
하
나한테 칼라라 도바사와 요로 와서 이 순랑이 끼쳐 죽으면서 이 순랑 끼쳐 죽으면 저랑게 칼라라 ngamoina chimoina betendi chorang topa yora yo mares topa sa yora yo mares chorang.
Yeah, so I'm not asking regarding the three divisions of adulting consciousness. So just back to the example that I mentioned just now. So when you see a plate of food offered by members at LDC, so do you have such qualms thinking that is that food salty or sweet? Would you have that? Would you have that qualms?
Can I try to answer that, Ken?
That's yeah. Toto goes okay. Yeah. Yang jagi link na tiro isla.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I answer the question? Can I try to answer the question?
Yeah, please.
I would say it's not a doubt because when you see food, it appeals to the eye consciousness, whereas whether it's sweet or sour or whatever taste can only be perceived by the taste consciousness. So seeing the food, whether it's salty or not salty, the perception, whether it's not a doubt because it's perceived by the eye consciousness.
이제 대충 말해서 가인스나 이제 칼라 짐바데 미셰레사 칼라 짐베 왕시데 미셰레사 이제 차감 나감 더보 이제 도바데 이제 가자야 차가모 가자 가자디 차슈체 모유나 야나디 nga모유나 이제 지식이 용화레사 지식 용자레사 이니디 미시당 지식 용자데 로가 인자 이니디 미시디 통 미시디 칼라디 통바 디 가자 디 테조 말에서 가이스나디 미시기 이니디 가자 nga모임 바디 차슈첸보 임바 이니디 시투 말이스
디데 와다레스야 다페 자야 저런게페 도체가 칼라 진두나 다 저런 칼라데 도와 간디 연나 매나 비 저런게 도바 사그레가 사 말이스 근데 저런게 도바 사야지 여러 와서 저런 야 저런게 페 칼라데 야보 연나 매나 비 딘디 저런게 도바 사 여러 와서 저런게
Yeah, so when you see a plate of food put on the table, so you would think that you have a qualm. You would have a qualm that thinking that is that how the food tastes like, right? How the food tastes like. Do you have would you have that qualm?
Maybe a curiosity.
Yeah, any day kasan kasa toba dobo ni di legi resa. Curiosity sa di di toba dobo ni di toba kandi dus di toba di legi res.
Di chana toba legi roas. Di chana kala te kandi yona me nambi chana togu roas di toba sagu roas.
Yeah, so you would have that qualms thinking how that food tastes like, right?
Yes.
So such qualm is doubting consciousness or not?
I'm saying no, because if you taste the food and you doubt whether it's spicy or salty, then I think it is. But if you see it and it tastes, I don't think so.
Yeah. Di toba de ni di kaza teto marisa kaisina di mishi tang jishi de loa ro ajila.
Nishi mishi kisha chine kisha tuyo mariswa. E kala da toba nganso teso da toba samaza kisha shiwroa. Chana dela ina mi toba de teso re da yin nganso teso da kisha shiwroa. Kala de yabo yona me na be tendi chorang ke toba sagroa chana. E toba 데라 도스나 디이나 미나 비 야보야나 메나 비 든디 도바사 사스나 데 태송 이그레베스
태송 인고를 왜 단다
태송 이그레베 데이나 데 천안 태송 레베스 니키제 데 주고다
Yeah, so because when you see the food, then you will have that qualms thinking how the food tastes like. Does it taste delicious or not, right? So when you have that qualms, is that qualm necessarily a doubting consciousness or not? So this is the question. So it's not about the eye consciousness or the tongue consciousness.
이시다 미실라 태송
I try.
제 그제 돼요 말이로
Huh?
다 미시다 선을 태송 그렇게 계셔야 말이지 되잖아
Huh?
지시다 미시서 선을 태송 계셔야 말이로
Oh, yeah. So it's not related to the eye consciousness or tongue consciousness.
담부처럼 태송이가 미스
Yeah.
저런 근데 또빠 사와이나 대 태송래가 말이 저런 태송래가 말했어
Yeah. So the question is, so when you have that qualms, is that qualm doubting consciousness or not? This is the question.
I try again, Geshe-la.
담부 first yeah
So for the question, Geshe-la said whether the food is delicious or not, it's not doubting consciousness. I think in the definition of these 5 kinds of how we know things is either towards the fact or not towards the fact. Maybe when someone give me a food put on a table, if the question is it a durian? Yes or no kind of thing, fact towards the fact or against the fact, then it's doubting consciousness. Is it sweet or sour? It's about the taste. It's not. So it has to be either go towards the fact. Is it a durian? Maybe that is doubting consciousness. They say the light is not enough, then it's a bit green color. So my mind asks myself, is it a durian? Then the answer is towards the yes, it's more like durian got thorn or not durian because it's a smooth surface. That kind is called doubting consciousness. Can got it. There is towards the fact on.
So regarding the durian, then you say, is it a durian? Then it is a doubting consciousness. But regarding the taste of it, then you say that it is not a doubting consciousness. Yeah. Ini di kasa kongi yang patient aja di syawal esa. Ini pina cesena so di nagong lah. Yang nabuji lah. Yang kala juzi kan lah ini yang kala juzi aja. Ini di durian ina minasa. Ini di toba resa. Kan isi na. Ini di kasa di tuanggu dan tuangmi gu gi kola. Ini di tuanggu dan tuangmi gu gi te som de tindi lagi resa. Ini di joa joa ina ngamo imba ya na di kumo imba ina. Ini di te som mares.
that duri de joa yora mes toba derwa di chorong toba sagurwa le da chorong da buti di toba sagurwa duri de yora mes.
Yes, but you would have qualms about how it tastes, right? Would you have qualms how durian tastes?
It's one of the characteristic lah, but about this question is yes or no, not about the taste lah.
I cannot answer.
Answer
here.
Yes.
Su tanda su lingyawa re sila. Yeah, so before we pass to someone else, then Gisela wants Dr. Go to answer the questions. Would you have would you have qualms about how the durian tastes?
So for me to confirm whether it's durian or not, taste is one of the characteristic. So if I know, let's say they close my eyes, I taste the food, then I will know it is durian. So the doubt of whether it's a durian or not will be clarified. I will make a decision whether it is durian or not after tasting it. So, but I won't have a question about the taste. I want to know it's durian or not. So what's my answer? Yes, no answer. Yeah. So they should ask, will I have qualm about the taste? I will say yes. It is one of the checklists that I will go through to answer my first question. Is it durian or not?
Ali, kasi hindi kasi di sa ini kasi na ni toba tambo di ini di durian yimi. Toba di yoba je ini di durian di doa di kandi imi dan toba niba di resa ini di toba tambo di tajia la ngeya gi kasa di hakoya gi chetu ini di durian di sagre ini di doa kandi imi ini di tagre resa anything 가서 따네 anything 도바 당보디 anything 타지 신이 타지 제토기래서
topa tha chi me che engi tangi toa kartan del ta le je shadas charang topa durin de pe yabo yoda me charang topa sagra sag mares tambu del la shi yinda sagre sag mares del la shi
yeah, so we stick to the questions. Yeah, the questions is asking you is it yes or no. Yeah, so the question is, would you have qualms whether the durian is delicious or not? Would you have any qualms thinking how the durian tastes like, or is that durian good?
No.
No. So you will not have qualm.
chu topa sag ma la invese
Toba sai mares.
chu duri de yabo kan ngi hi ha ko ure chila
Huh?
chu duri de toa yo na yabo yo na me na yabo yo ba me ba chana ngi hi china ha ko ure chila
응시 대하고
ngi hi ha ko ure chila de che san sayo ma chi hi ka sayo ma ro chi hi ka na sayo ma nyo yo ma re se de chana ngi hi china ha ko ure ka re se
응시 대
ngi hi yo na ha ka re se toba ma sa go ra ka rin toba ma sa go ma re se
응시 당 응수미나 대지바 지간 이나기라.
ma
응시에서.
chana go duri de pe choche ga duri ji sha na te yabo yo da me toba sag ma la so toba ma sa na nga tu chi ku to la nyo yo ma re tra yabo yo me troi ka te me nyo yo ma nyo je res te chana ga de toba chuna ma sa na ya me de duri de yabo yo ha ko cha re wa ya me yabo me ba ha ko cha res
야보하고 차례 야나데 야보 민바하고 차례스.
ya me troi yo ba ha ko cha ra ya me troi me ba ha ko cha res chana san sa yo ma ro was 어디
드어 요바하고 차례베스. 기자.
다 거기 도바 멜로 군도
도바메스. 이니디 지시 마뇽경 이니디 도와디 요바하고 차례베스. 디와디르 와이즈라.
요 지시 좀 만용이라 저런 그 변나 좋아도 요매 하고 차려야지 아빠 문도 하시나
Yeah, so yeah, if you are not if you how's it do not have any qualms whether the how the food tastes like, then since you haven't experienced it with your tongue consciousness, does it mean that you have you already know that how it tastes like? So because you say that you are not going to have qualms whether how the durian tastes like, so does it mean that before you experience the taste with your tongue consciousness, you already know that how the durian tastes like?
Yeah, when we have doubt on certain thing, we would have some idea or knowledge about the characteristic. Then only we have doubt, like sound is permanent, impermanent, or either. We would have to know what sound is. So now I ask, is this for durian? I should have some earlier knowledge about what durian is like. So including the taste. So it's subsequent. So it is yes. Answer is yes. I would have already have that knowledge to have the doubt.
그래서 mambushul다
Yeah, any kasa any nganzu kasa ngobo chila ni 태종 사와 ina any nganzu kasa ngobo te yana jala de kasa yang this di singyu resa ngobo te kare yimin dan kande yimi ini ting nganzu kasa this gyu yo resa yang ji na
저 그게 지금 매서 이 좋아진 땅 매서들이 간다 저 둘이 간이 통나 저나 좋아 여다면 대서 지상 말해실라다 다 디모
yeah, so back to the very
야보 여다면 도바 지상 말해라
yeah, so when you
사그레 만 마스 렌제셔서 마부시 마이스
당연히 디사기 말아야 돼.
야 통마이나
during the 통화에나 디 가서 야보 요메니 디 도바사기 이민 와이라.
둘이 간디 통마이나 저나 도바 지상 말해서 야보 좋아 여다면
Yeah, so I'll say again, I'm not asking whether you have earlier knowledge or not, etc. So back to the very basic questions. So when you see a durian, I mean, would you? I mean, you are not going to have any qualms with how it tastes like. I mean, just say yes or no.
Yes,
Yes
no.
or no.
No, no.
Toba
All
saya
durian
manis.
are tasty to me.
Sorry.
All durian, I like all the durian. All are tasty to me. So I know qualm about their taste.
Ya, ini di kata durian ini di sama di simbo yuaresa. Ceza ini di toba saya mensa.
durian 강가 신고 요새.
Oh.
야야야.
Ceza toba
답에
mensa.
야 부시버려 생각나는 다네. 아 저런 거 도봐 이제 지금 하지 요 말이야.
So you're not going to have any qualms, right? Not even a bit of qualm.
Qualm means question, qualm means doubt, right? Qualm means uncertainty.
Yeah, qualms. Is another word for kind of
저런 거
like
도봐
doubt.
이제 요 말이야. 저런 거 도봐 이제 지금 요 말이야.
So you don't have any doubt or you do not have any qualms. So because now we are trying to, because one is the definitions, the words in the definitions are, another one is doubting consciousness. Yeah. So we are using a different words to differentiate. One is qualms, another is doubting consciousness. So I mean, do you have any qualms? So Kishala say, ask. Not even a bit.
Because my doubt is about whether it is durian or not. Whether it's not about whether it's a tasty durian or not. So I know qualm about the taste.
So ini di kasa durian yimi ini di toba yuesa. Ini di kasa dua kandi yimi di toba mes.
집발에 누레임이 덮어서 누레임이 덮어지 미 통산에 그 누레임이 덮어지 간을래 그러고 이제 애플에
Kasa ini di nagung la.
알레
나공 la ini di kasa sewo tong matuwa.
야야 땅이 그 간다 지나기 좋아도 전화도 뒤진 거 치마서 이마 지랍져 버려와
So so regarding my questions, and probably we don't quite get it, so now I'll explain to you.
가르스나 먼저 빼쳐놓을 때 저바지 리고래 랑기 열라 도빠지에서나 그 태송 이고 말했어 거래 로아 도빠지에 봤던지 대 태송 이고 말했어 답변 가서 강사도 그 베로와 강사 나다고 지나 베로와 다 랑도고 치르 소라베 인데 간디메 데라 랑도고 치르 소라 베다 랑도 치르 맞아라 베 산이베 니마샤나 차바땅나세 에데 도바사 마던 타치등이 차바땅 그런 니마샤그스 라투고 말와
차바
산이 차바땅나 니마샤스네 다 산이 차바땅 니마샤나 도바 마등이 타치데 차바땅 그런 라투고 말 타치데 니마샤그스 라투고 말에 딩이 도바 사그리스 딩이 도바 사그리데 나 태소 말했어 나 태소 말했어 로아
나 태소 말해
나 태소 말했어 나니
나 태소 말해
저런 상이 니마샤마 저런 차바땅 니마샤마 도바 사그라 저런 강사기 강사기 들이 도바 사그라 강사한테 태소 말와
강사디 태소
태소 말했어 로르다 저런 아까디 가버리시더니
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah. So in text, it says that if you have qualms with regard to its object, that qualm is not necessarily doubt. Yeah. So when you have qualms with regard to its object, that is not necessarily a qualms. That is not necessarily a doubting consciousness. For example, a person like me. So I do not know. I do not know. I have qualms whether tomorrow is going to rain or is going to be sunny. So I have qualms, right? I have qualms whether tomorrow is going to rain or is going to be sunny. So I am
게시센트로진 이거 산이 차바땅마다 게시센트가 도바사 그래서 이 도바사나 게시센트 대소 말했어 된다 들려고
Yeah, so Geshe-Junru have that qualms whether tomorrow is going to rain or sunny. So Geshe-Junru is not a doubting consciousness.
다 단다들이 니 창도 리바단
Yeah.
다 간다 도바 인다 미들이 도바 제스나 때 태송 이거 말해서 도바사나
도바사와이나
태송 이거 말해 태송 그 진이들라 타니 도비 리바론다 리바 셰바 이거 태송들라 셰바 이거 나 간사도 셰바 말와 나 태송 사그레데 셰바 말와 태송라 셰바 이거 알아다
셰바 말이 Yeah. So if we have qualms or if we have qualms, it's not necessarily a doubting consciousness. Why? Because I have qualms. Shall I say I have qualms, but I'm not a consciousness, right? I'm not a consciousness. I'm not a knower, right? Because the definition you can see here, a knower that have qualms to pointedly by his own power.
네. 태송라 셰바 이거로 와. 태송라 셰바 이거래서 다 도바 당보들에 로와 랑게 유들 앞에 태송 도바 요나 태송 이거 말해서 그러간다.
랑게 유라
랑게 유라 도스나 태송 이거 말해서 답변나 단단 앞에 샤사송아 로와.
Yeah, so being a doubting consciousness or being a doubt, then it is necessarily a consciousness. So whatever is a doubt is necessarily a consciousness. So when a person, when someone has qualms with regard to its object, then it is not necessarily a doubt, a doubting consciousness.
어디시? 나 태송이 하고 민지랑 태송도 봐 세보셔야 되다. 태송다 다야 배 랑유지 배 다다가 마다냐베 데린 타니스 다다가 마다냐베 타니스 또베 셰바지나야 대 태송이 고 말했어. 다다가 마다냐베 데리 태송 상기지 셰바지나 야 대 태송이 고 말했어.
태송 사기 셰바디.
셰바
태송이.
대 태송이 고 녀바 요 말했어. 다다가 마다냐베 데리 셰바 도바 상기지 셰바이나 야 태송이 고 녀바 요 말했어.
So even a consciousness that has having qualms whether sound is permanent or impermanent, that itself again is not necessarily a doubting consciousness.
그것이 정체 가르치는 가서 대총다 총대지 생여로와 대총지 총대다 생다 대총다 총대지 생대인 코도 좋아다 때도 좀 몸보여로와 원디시도 좀 망보여래. 그래서 참 앞에 태총 말에서 태총게 또 집에는 세대게 태총고 또 집에 랑게 열라 도비 랑게 열라 도그래마도 태총 세와데 랑게 또지 도바지 고로와 랑또지 도비 랑또지 타니스 도바지 고그래 신주지로와 랑또지 타니스 도비 리빠지 고그래 태총다 춘대지 세대 소다 열라 도그래데 이나 랑또지 타니스 도비 리빠도 말에서로
랑또기 말어. Yeah, so why do I say that a consciousness that has qualms with regard to sound, whether it is permanent or impermanent, is again is not necessarily a doubting consciousness, is because a mind that possesses similarity with doubt and the feelings, etc., which are accompaniers of that mind, with that mind possessing similarity with doubt, have qualms by the power of doubt, but do not have qualms too pointedly by their own power. So a doubting consciousness is a knower that has qualms too pointedly by its own power. And that mind that possesses similarity with doubt and the feelings which are accompaniers of that mind, they have qualms as well. However, they do not have qualms by their own power. Therefore, such mind that possesses similarity with doubt and the feelings which are accompaniers of that mind are not doubting consciousness.
태송의 진이들 상당 랑도진 타디스토비 리발로운도와 오데 다 지다 나서 제가 좀 쉬를 근종 알아서 저기 신시 심발 하고 그래 나서 태송세와의 랑도진 타디스토비 리바샤군도와 오다 태송다 총대지 세 강가디베 창사 집아 도바사 그래 태송을 도바사 그래 랑도진 타디스 도바 말해 걸어 다 태송 대이 또지 대다 총대지 또 생다 좋아다 안디히 여러와 원디히 뜻을 참하게 배 대 도그레스 도바 사그레데 이나 태송이 또지래마도 그런 게 랑도지 또지 도바 말해서 거.
Yeah, so how say this, how say a mind that possesses similarity with Tao and the feelings, etc., which are accompanies of that mind. So this, when we come to the 5 omnipresent factors, then we will have a better understanding. So how say, in brief, a mind that possesses similarity with Tao and the feelings, etc., which are accompanies of that mind, they do have qualms. They do have qualms, but they have qualms by the power of doubts. They do not have qualms too pointedly by their own power. So therefore, they are not a doubting consciousness. So whether something is a doubting consciousness or not, then we have to see whether it fulfills the qualification, the character, the definitions. A knower that has qualms too pointedly by its own power.
다 뒤질라 가서 나바 로시드 지인다. 다 태송도 도스지로와. 다 간다 태송도 저는 상당하다 심들하고 상당고 랑도진 타니스 도비지 바시 딜 상당고로와.
Yeah, so I will go to the next one. So how's it, doubting consciousness is something that how's it, you go back and then you think about it. How's it, what is a doubting consciousness?
다 하고서 태송도와데 백나이나 기지전도이나 베 도파 마버 사그르데 태송 말했어. 어디 하고 주랑사 하고 되본도와 강사도 참 태송 말했어. 강사도 저거 도파 마버 사그르스. 도파 사그르 태송 말했어로 강사 참았.
Yeah, so how's it, the example that I've given to you just now. So you think about it, then you will better understand it. So Geshe-la said, Geshe Zunju, I do have qualms, but I am not a doubting consciousness, because all persons are not a doubting consciousness. All persons they do have qualms, yeah. But all persons are not a doubting consciousness. 강사 상마인데 대체에서 말하지라.
말이 강사 태송 말이지 간다. 태송 산에 강사 뭐보다 태송 사구라. 태송 뭐보 사구라. 나서 상마 사구라.
Yeah, so we all have qualms, yeah, but we are not doubting consciousness.
Geshe-la, before we can go back and think, can Geshe-la explain by its own power? Then I can go back and think.
그래서 Geshe-la 랑독이 된다데 가리리사.
람도세와데 이제 태송대 배 그런 게 도바사 유 사야데 신배 조선다 그런데 총대지 세대 대라 때먹어 봐 세대다 총대디 생주 현다 여러와 생주 현다도 저라 마대봐 그런 게 또집에 도바래서 그래
이니디 가자데 중den기 셈다 이니디 셈중된 소 이니디 마템바 이니
마대봐
그런랑기
Yeah,
so by its own power means that this doubting consciousness, without depending on a mind that possesses similarity with doubt and the meanings and the feelings, etc., which are accompanies of mental factors. So without depends on mind that possess similarity with doubt and the mental factors accompanying that mind. So without depending on it, doubting consciousness have qualms by its by its own power. So without depending on qualms by its own power means that a doubting consciousness can have qualms without depending on a mind that possess a similarity with doubt and the mental factors accompanying that mind.
난수 생기배 초와 대화치 생기배 초와 대화 용어지 여러와 생기 초와 대화 용어지 여러와 생기 초와 대화 용어데 생코로 랑도지 용어를 쓰는 말이 있어 그러대 생코로 랑그 또지 초와 대화의 용어를 쓰는 용어 말이 있어 가르게 또지 용어를 쓰나 생코로게 코로 초와 대이 또지 초와 대화 용어 초와 생디 코라 군동하는 초와요와 군동하게 남실 초와지요와 세 코랑게 코도 중에 초와 대 또지 내코로 세되게 대화데 초와 대화데 용거래 마도 세 코로 란도지 초와 대화데 용마 말해 세 코랑게 코도 중에 초와 대화 용게지 군도 대 또지 대화데 용말에 해서 그래 배잖아 근데 먼저 줄라 군도 저기 야부시화 고래
Yeah, so for example, mind experiencing a pleasant feeling. mind experiencing a pleasant feeling. So the mind do not that mind do not experience it by its own power. So how the mind experience the pleasant feeling? Mind experience the pleasant feeling by the power of its accompanier, which is the feeling. So one of the 5 omnipresent factors. So mind experience the pleasant feeling by the power of its accompanier feeling.
Sente Shina Matimba, Korangi Toji, Nyomba Mari, Soa Deva, Nyomba Mari, Shina Tembare, Karel Tembasna, Ding Kochi, Soa de la Tembare, Esgor. What that Soa de Toji, Soa Deva Yungi, de Toji, the Kona Deva Nyombare, Mato, Shina Matimba, Korangi Toji, Petsoa Deva, the Nyomba Mari Sindi.
Yeah, so mind experience the pleasant feeling not by its own power. So how the mind experience a pleasant feeling? It experience the pleasant feelings by the power of that accompanier feelings. So the mind do not experience a pleasant feeling without depending on others.
Oh, that is so Jet Lever Mambo, Taroa. That is so singing quote she Kundo Nasa, the Suge, Kundo Nabo de Chi, Soso Lega Shilere. They never in a Sinti Lega for Chia Chanso, Niba Zoyomar. Sinti Lega Chanso Jet Uyomar. Sinti Lega Chanso Jet to Goma Koran been called Kundo Nabo de Lega Chinit Mebaina, the Sinko Lega Jet Uyomar.
Yeah, so when we later we will talk about these 5 omnipresent factors. So if we do not each of the 5 omnipresents, they have their own functions to do. So if mind do not depends on these omnipresent factors, then this mind cannot function well.
Yeah. That's Samal Tobasiagi, Tesson Tobasiagi. Riwaya ta tetson sewa de pe tetson ruwa ta deba tetson seagi.
Yeah, so I wish to get rid of your doubt about the doubting consciousness.
Munda dire. Da di nanji dis ko de bore ngazo ngarang pe kansa ge tetson saguro ga de tetson mare tetson de la shepa yi bore se ngazo kansa shepa maro de khatu ko de bochina.
Kansa ene de thoba sagire.
Toba saguro se karlina toba
Tetson mare.
sagure. Toba sangi chansa de pe tetson sina mare se. Tetson ko tetson sewa de la shepa yi gore kansa shepa maro was. Kansa ge toba sangi yoro was. Ruwa amdi yoro.
Yeah, so not all that which has qualms about about something is a doubting consciousness, because person also have qualms, but they are not a doubting consciousness.
Dishi. 다 ngazo loshi di 다 loshi da disi ge chenpo re ro ngazo nyamji nyane chiya ge ge chichi chago ro loshi di ge wang ge pe ngazo dedu kanga de pe dungi changsa soya de loshi de wang ge ro
Na dendru said
pe kanda liji dungi nyonggu wa da sinji dungi nyonggu ya soa zoji loshi di wang ge le go ro.
Yeah, so next is wrong consciousness, and it is a very important topic to study, because the physical sufferings and the mental suffering comes about because of the wrong consciousness.
다 loshi de la pe tsini de la rangi la shinji lo do shubi ripa se go re rangi yo la shinji lo do shubi ripa de loshi tsini se.
So the definitions of a wrong consciousness is a knower that engages its object erroneously.
다 로시 de la kanda toba loshi de tomi loshi se ni sha gundo wa.
So when wrong consciousnesses are divided, they are 2: conceptual wrong consciousnesses and non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses.
다 toba loshi se wa de da dangji toba rong rangji toba de su drwa toba loshi de.
Because yeah, so the example of the first, the conceptual wrong consciousness, are a thought apprehending sound as permanent and a thought apprehending the horns of a rabbit.
다 미주 춘지비 toba zo de toba loshi ra kanda.
Yeah, also because a conceptual consciousness apprehending a mirage as water, then is also an example for conceptual wrong consciousness.
다 toba loshi de dang da ta mambo yore ji ling chang ya ke che tu yi ro. 다 nimba 데르와 도미 로시들라 다 도미 로시들라 간다 이시다 왕신이 레군도와.
So with regard to the second non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses, there are two again. So mental consciousnesses, there are non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses, and sense consciousnesses, there are non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses.
다 간다 되는도와 이시 집에 로시들라 다 몰랑 중앙봉봉보 사와나 여몰랑 시바다바. 어디 간다 도미 로시들와. 이시 집에 도미 로시들.
Yeah. So the first one, a mental non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses. So referring to this one.
So 이시 집에 근데 몰랑
low.
중앙봉봉보 나이 간다 시바데 도미 로시리에서 간다 이시 집에 도미 로시리 간다 거기 간다 넘바 나시 간다 대나 요 말하고 대나 가서 로시스와데 랑기 열배 신지로도 슈바레스와 다 몰랑지 간다 거 들어와 몰랑지 거보데 간다 거보라 주요 말와 몰랑지 거보데 거보 남고요 거보 통고데 이노베 디 왜니스디 요 말와스 다 이시 집에 도면 로시들와 다 공여보 매기도 간다 수데 여보 매기도 등여보 진도 거와 데 열라 신지로도 슈데를 간다로와
because say chama wala de sunga ina isla.
오다 담부 딜로 또 현다 고서 고다 디즈 차 깔리여서로.
라소. ini kaza de ngombo de machine do ngombo de jimbaro isla.
다 ngom보 지바서데 다 간다 ngom보 수데 ngom보 매신도 공om보 진고래 골미나나로와.
Laso. Yeah, so the first, a mental non-conceptual wrong consciousness is, for example, a dream consciousness that clearly sees as blue, the blue of a dream. So a dream consciousness that clearly see the blue of a dream as blue. So this is an example for a mental non-conceptual wrong consciousness. So why is it a wrong consciousness? Is because it doesn't exist in reality as it appears. It doesn't exist in reality as it appears. Therefore, it is a wrong consciousness. So even though the blue of a dream appears, but in reality, that blue doesn't exist. So yeah.
다 가서 데 왕시 집에 도미 로시 세와데 다 강릉에 보내 왕시다 동가세 보내 왕시데 수 참마데 왕시 집에 도미 로시로와.
가자 양야 디 가자.
왕시 집에 도미 로시데.
왕시데.
왕시 집에 도미 로시 가서 도미 로시들라 이시 집에 도미 로시다 왕시 집에 도미 로시 니샤고요와. 다 담보 이시 집에 도미 로시든 로사임바. 다 님바 왕시 집에 도미 로시디. 다 왕시 집에 도미 로시데 다 강릉에 보내 왕시다 동가세 보내 왕시데 소.
Yes. Yeah. So and then example for the example of the second. So the sense consciousness, they are non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses. Then, yeah, this one. The wrong consciousnesses, they are sense consciousnesses. Are a sense consciousness which sees snow mountains as blue, and a sense consciousness that sees a white conch as yellow. So this is the example of the second.
다 로시스와다 간다 랑게 유 니츠데 간다 신지로다 유 니츠데 뭐에 니츠 많이 봐 로와 다 로시드랑 가서 막 니지 샤우디 간다 인바지라 많이 봐 로만 짐바치 로와 인바지라 많이 봐 많이 바지라 인바 짐바치 이어바지라 매번 지는 거지 매바지라 이어번 지는 거지 어떤데 다시 해봐대 다 간다 로시리에서 고로 로시 로와
집에 쉬어봐대로 집에 쉬어봐대
간다 이어발라 매번 지게 쉬어봐 로와 매발라 이어번 지게 쉬어봐 다 인발라 많이 번 집에 쉬어봐 많이 발라 인번 집에 쉬어봐대 로시리에서 고다디.
So basically, when we talk about wrong consciousness, it is a consciousness, a consciousness that apprehends something. How to say? Being something. So consciousness that apprehends being something as not being something, and consciousness that apprehends not being something as being something, and consciousness that apprehends something existence as non-existent, and consciousness that apprehends something non-existent as existence. Then those consciousness apprehend such are wrong consciousness.
다 로시의 얘기 저한테만 진심이 있어야돼. 하고 봐지로와 간다 이인발라 마이바 니스 뇌니스 이인발라 마이바 아 뇌니스 마이발라 이인바 다 여발라 메발라 여바세 다 든딘진이게 셰바치다 간다 로시 로요레스 다 저런게 돼서 그 로시기 저런도 진실이 되고돼 시기 된바이나 지라더와 네 로시 간다 내가 너무 지셔자 임바 다 간다 이인발라 마이반 집이 셰바 마이발라 이인반 집이 셰바 여발라 매반 징게 매발라 여반 징게 셰바치 다 셰바도 리강가 로시리스 로아 로시 다들 저런도 진실이 수 eng에서는 진실이 샤다.
So I have give you the nature of wrong consciousness. Basically, it's a consciousness that apprehends something, being something as not being something, not being something as being something, existent as non-existent, non-existent as existence. So I've given you the nature of it. So all of these consciousness that apprehend such are a wrong consciousness. So now you give me the example. I mean, do you still remember the example of a wrong consciousness? So any of you can give me an example.
Should I not go below? Non-existent as existent, like the rabbit's horn, the child of the barren woman, sky flower. It never in non-existent, but some of us believe it's existent. Existent as non-existent, the presence of three jewels, the law of cause and effect, they are existent, but because of wrong erroneous consciousness, we think they are non-existent. Okay, the rest can others give.
So ini dia kasa meva yuba jimbe shewa di pena chashana kasa ribon ra jin shewa ta ini kasa pumo de kasa pu ki ma thoba kasa mosham gi pu jimbe shewa ta ini di kasa namkha gi medo jimbe shewa ini di meva yuba jimbe shewa re ini di yuba meva jimbe shewa pena chashana mikashi gi ini di lokshi di yore ini di konju sum de yuba ini di meva jingi yore ini di lende yuba ini di meva jingi yore
다 대가래 렌디 여바 매번 좀 다 렌디 매번 다 따와대 디 간다 로시 두아 지루하다대 맞어 먹기 주나노야 먹기 주나노 로다대 다 로시 두아 지루아.
Yeah, so as that's right. So regarding the existent as apprehending existent as non-existence, for example, regarding apprehends three jewels and the karmic cause and effect as non-existent, such view is such a wrong view. So it's one of the 10 non-virtuous. So 10 non-virtuous that we mentioned in Lamrim class. So that is one of the example in the 10 non-virtues, and then that is regarded as the worst types of view, wrong view.
야, 다 현다 요에서 생시지에 샤는 디그레스 현다 요나. 다 정말 지징에 소야 지는 가서 로시세와다 능외에 대해서 쉬사인 봐. 가는 지고면.
Yeah, so I have told you the nature of wrong consciousness. So other person, you can give me other example.
요발라 매번 징기지 로시지.
요바 매번
당기지 로시지 샤메 진짜.
장기니 디콘주 숨다 레디 샤바와.
이 샤르와 다디 도르고 샤르와. 아 신다.
Yeah. So how about you give me an example, a consciousness that apprehends existent as non-existent, besides the three jewels and the karmic cause and effect Dr. Go mentioned just now. So you give me another example.
야, 매발라 여반진이 계지. 매발라 여반진이 계지 로시지.
Also, you can give me the example for non-existent apprehended as existent.
The one I gave rabbit's horn,
Yeah.
sky
Besides
flower,
the example that you
child of
mentioned
the
just now.
barren woman. Beside that.
Besides that. Oh yeah. Thank you.
For example, I is truly existent.
Is the example for?
For wrong view of the actual I.
Yeah. So.
Inherent existent I.
Yeah. Ini dia di kasa peti shower isa ngani di tempat tuba.
Oh, demba tubanji. Oda tepe gasha te pe yaburta. Da rangi tubanjimba da demba tubanjimba te ta te toshi ngaso dondo glota terwa. Dondo glota doshi tere ta de. Dondo glota. Oda dir da ngaso gasha. Ta gasha pe demba tubanjimba rangi tubanjimba rangi singi tubanjimba da. Oda te lota ngweni tane lota tere da. Dondo lota.
Yeah, so this is a very good example for the object. The object of object of negation. Yeah, so this is one of the good example for as an object of negation. So I truly existence, I intrinsically existence, I inherently existence. So those are the object of negations, and this is the worst types of wrong views that superimpose.
다드네 로또 두시 돈도 로또다 군대 로또니 로소 다 로시스네 두스르다 단다 군대 로또다 도도고 라소 군조 메바타와다 렌데 메바타와 데 로시 군대지 로타다 로시 들어와 왔다 단다 돈도 로타데 단다 거기 라바나시 다 랑이 유튜브 여반 징바 홍보 랑이 유튜브 여반 징바 로와 어디서 로시 두아들아 돈도 로타 들어와대.
Yeah, so when we talk about wrong views, there are two types. Yeah, so wrong views that superimpose and wrong views that denigrates or denies. So wrong views that denies are the example that Dr. Go mentioned just now. So apprehend the existence of three jewels and existence of karmic cause and effect as non-existent, and wrong views that they superimpose, like for example the example that Mr. Xiao mentioned just now. So apprehend the inherent existence of I, inherent the I as inherent existence. So these are or inherent existence, intrinsically existence, or as truly existence. So those are the example for wrong view that superimpose.
어디가서 로시에 세워 등에 빠도 하고 봐지 로시에 대왕이 가서 레 두차 장자 마모 살로다 로시에 대왕이 레그르다 로시에 대왕이 레그르와 다 로시에 단답이나 로다 배 로다 군대다 로다 로와 디소 배 왕기다 랭에 봐 쇼사노 거와 로와 오 로다다 군대 디소 왕기 랭에 봐 사노 거와 다 렌데 메 바타와다 군조 메 바타와다 로와 오 디소 왕기 배 레쇼 사노 거라 랭에 봐.
Yeah, so we have to know this wrong consciousness very well, because of it, then we create all sorts of negative karma. So the wrong view that I mentioned just now that superimpose, and the wrong view that then denies, and because of this wrong view, then we accumulate a negative karma.
Ken, I just want to check with Gisela about the magician and its illusion, horses and elephants. These are wrong view as well.
그래서 계실라 아니디 가서 미추게 디요와 미추다 아니디 가서 디다 주와다 아니디 디 랑진디 디 투기요와 이때 미추게기 아니디 텐데 지 소기요레 아니디 양 로시나스
리리 로시라 주미탈라 다 주마케지 간다도 지고르다 당에비네서 요 말와 당에비네서 앞에 주미 따다 람보지 텐데 동고요레로 주미왕게 통고를 대응해비니에서 요 말하고 주미게 따서 요 말와
난견 되나 요 말와
노나 되나 요 말와
Yeah, that's right. Those are the example of wrong those are wrong consciousness, because it doesn't exist it doesn't exist in reality as it appears.
다 로시데 가리나 찬서 자 죽을 찬 상당절에 bomba 메바레스 bomba 요 말에서 인지데 로시로와 봄바 여라 뇌네서 로와 데 봄바 여마스네페 데 로시 차노 봄바 뇌네서 여레 데 간다 다 좀바 여 마레신 짐바이나 데 로시로와 다 좀바 매반 징게 데 로시리로와 데 로시리 데 장주 짐바 매반 징게 디소 로시리로와.
Yeah, so basically you can give many others, if you think about it, then you can give many examples, like for example, apprehending vast as non-existence, apprehending arhat as non-existence, apprehending bodhisattva as non-existence. So those apprehensions are the wrong consciousness.
That is a logic mambu dajna
Yeah, so there are many other types of example for wrong consciousness that you can think of. Yeah.
But Dekila, when you come down to the very basic, the innate ignorant mind, innate means natural, that's at the very beginning, and the innate mind that designates, that is a wrong mistaken mind, and that is the basis, and that is the coverage of all conventional mind. So in other words, the conventional mind itself is a mistaken mind, isn't it?
Sorry, the innate ignorance is
innate
definite.
Ignorance, the two innate ignorance, one innate ignorance of seeing things as truly existent, and the other one is the innate mind of designating. They come innate, they rise from the very beginning. So the basis of this is the experience of the conventional mind. So now the conventional mind is in totality a mistaken mind, isn't it?
Yani kishala jo thengi ge mariba den yoro ajla thengi mariba de la tene any kunzob gi sim khang yo ba de khangin ba de any di chama lo sheres de lap tu gi de shi tu gi yonas
ise kun mariba linji taltene
kaza thengi mariba de la tene any nga jo gi kunzob gi sim khang yo ba de kunzob gi sim conventional mindset de any di kunzob gi sim khang yo ba de they lo sheres de lap tu gi yonas
ta mariba teltene ta kanda kunzogi sesena ta yogi necho chitawa ki maniba zimbi sheba de lo yin sarwa ta de shanan disarwa
kaza kunzogi same sate
ngaso ta chida kunzogi senso de korang de lo yin sar mariba te wange ta kanda le ngemba shawa ngemba zingi jorwa kanda mariba te wange ta lende meban zimba roa mariba te wange legend meban zingi de yura mariba te wange roa
ini tada de kunzogi same shigioro
da tenda zingi de kanda kunzogi sen res la de la tine roa
kaza di mariba te wange ini je lende meba zimbe kunzogi same de
mariba lende meban zimbe to kunzogi sen
ini de kaza yugi nezu ini de jidawa shindu
masheba roa ta de
masheba de ini de lo sheres
de roa
so ini de kaza kunzogi same kanga ini de lo shi nas de tammarwa
de kola malke lagu samarwa ya de malon yasat tingudo kachidan korang pe danda thani tise kensana yirwa
so due to the ignorance, then the conventional minds that apprehends the non-existence that apprehends three jewels as non-existent, karmic cause and effect as non-existent, that conventional mind is a wrong consciousness, because it is a consciousness that doesn't know exactly the mode of existence of the object.
Kishla, just now Kwa used the word mistaken consciousness. Maybe Kishla can take this opportunity to explain mistaken consciousness and wrong consciousness.
Ale, yang Kishla, tangi ini di siwa ini di koma song karena ini di totoko ki di kan di shugido yang kasa Mr. Kwa ki ini di tushie sik di ini biju tang bari tushie tang lo shi kiwa kari nas
yor 맞아 로셰라 티시 그래 티시라 로시 이거 말해서라고 로셰라 티시 비차로와 로셰라 티시 별 티시라 로시 뭐 이제 가지나 본지 또 받아봐 본지 또 받대 티시를 로시 말해서 로시 많이 이제 가지나 그 본지 또 받게 본바대 또 되어라고 본바 니 되어 본바대 그 대나 열라고 오 본바대 본지 또 받게 본지 또 받대 티시를 되나 로시 말해서
bomba kaza zimbe bomba de tuen la yores.
bomba zibe topa dige da bomba yoban zima na shi bomba de yor ko
kaza tushi imbe gumze.
tushi ko topa ro
Oh. Yeah, so the difference between mistaken consciousness and wrong consciousness. So is wrong because wrong consciousness is necessarily a mistaken consciousness, but mistaken consciousness is not necessarily a wrong consciousness. For example, a conceptual consciousness apprehending a vase. So this conceptual consciousness apprehending a vase is a mistaken consciousness, but it is not a wrong consciousness. Why conceptual consciousness apprehending vase is a mistaken consciousness? Because it is a conceptual consciousness or conceptual thought. Why this conceptual consciousness apprehending vase is not a wrong consciousness? Because a vase exists as it being apprehended. Vase exists as is being apprehended by the conceptual consciousness. Therefore, it is not a wrong consciousness.
topa tanti ganga de tishi res ko topa tanti ganga ro topa tanti ganga tishi re de ko lo tanti re de re lo she mari lo ro topa tanti ganga de tishi re de na lo she mari es
Yeah, so all factually concordant conceptual consciousness are mistaken consciousness, but they are not wrong consciousness. I repeat, all factually concordant conceptual consciousness are mistaken consciousness, but they are not wrong consciousness.
da taban ji topa jero da tanji topa de ta lo she de tishi ni ga res da di
Yeah, so a conceptual consciousness apprehending sound as permanent, so it is both a mistaken consciousness and a wrong consciousness.
Okay, thank you,
Sheila. Perhaps a better word for mistaken consciousness is concealed consciousness or hidden consciousness, because it does not reveal the actual truth of existence. It only reveals it's a concealed. I think there's a word I heard about, it's a concealed or hidden as a better word than mistaken consciousness. Can you clarify on that?
So ini di tushi na gisla tushi tsi di kasa sikchap trawo ina ini kasa di kunzobgi kasa sheba yang na kodu gyue sheba tsi di bichu tangwa ina di yaga mendos
ji chini de nganda rang na yin la tri ri pa se go ro
rangi nang yu
ganda de o rang na yin la tri ri pa ji chane de ganda tishi yin se go ro
제자인이 디 가서 공기 가서 탄이 이 차네 디 간지 주기도 양 주시에나 아니 디 가서 주시기 직접 이 가서 직접 디 가서 군접기 시바 당고도 규베 시바 디 비주당 와이나 야가면 로사 이니 디 탄이 디 유나스
단다 신이 될 나나 디 야그레스고 로와 랑 나일란 트리 리파데 간다 티시지 신이제 티시지 안다
Yeah, so I think it's still better go back to the definitions of mistaken consciousness, which is a knower that is mistaken with its appearing object. So I think this is better. A knower that is mistaken with regard to its appearing object.
Thank you.
Ishila, can in this page that they can show on the screen, dream consciousness is a wrong consciousness. First thing is whether is that correct? All dream consciousness are wrong consciousness. So then, Yap have a question that if dream is wrong consciousness, why are we asked to refer to what appeared in our dream during initiation?
So kisla ini di kasa milam gishiba ini di milam gishiba ganga di kasa lokshirawa.
미lan 시바 다 로시마도 정말 지지깔에 가보러와.
이내 아주 kasa di wangshuwe gala. Ini di nima tangbo jabo kasa chen tangbo jabo ina ini azu milam kang jungwa jabo ina ini azu di taji chia di dua labja nangi dua. Ini di karijini yang labja di nangi dusa kisi kasa milam gishiba di lokshina.
다 상보도 용거로와. 다 상보든데 용도 용거리데. 다 가서 밀란에 다 상보 용거리데 또 남바나 신가서 뭐서 그러 통야 깔래 가보러와.
나와 낭신 전에 이어봐 데 깔래 가보 요래.
이스 깔래 가보러와 가서 니랑 세워데 되나 맞는 바 계속 시고요라. 이는 가서 따라고 제 세만하고 지다 야보레슬라고로와.
그래서 야보 요래 지기 요래.
야부 지고라 따라고 가서 단 근데 왕심깔에 배 다상보든지 거서 때지다 가서 니라라 뭐에 쨌든지 용케 요요라. 가서 또 빠진게 또발린디게 되서라 단다 니라나 뭐에 쨌든지 고 니라나 수수 최현나 최응에 쨌시는 게 든지 용요라 간다 라마 또 빠진게 든지 용요라. 자도서 니스 로가레 쨌지다 니라도 시에바르 자마가 로 tantis나 디스칼레 가보 요라.
Yeah, so so when we check our dreams, like for example, then we see whether there is a good sign or not. So then we regard that sign as good sign, for example. However, to say that what we dream of exists in reality, then is kind of difficult to say that. So not all dreaming consciousness are wrong consciousness. Like for example, those who have developed realizations, and like for example, they dream of receiving teachings. They dream of receiving teachings, and in fact, they have received the teachings. So that is the exceptions is a special case. Other than that, in general, when we talk about dreaming consciousness, it's difficult to say that what you dream of exists in the reality. Yeah, so in general, a dreaming consciousness, what we dream of what we dream of doesn't exist in reality. That is in general. So those that I mentioned just now, those who have developed realizations and they see Manjushri, for example, has had the visions of Manjushri in their dreams, then there is a special case exception.
So we can believe on the signs, good or bad signs, since we are not realized. Can we believe what our dream tells us after the initiation? We are asked to look at good and bad signs. Can we trust our dream?
Yeah, ini di kasa toba maki wa jawo ina ngang chu pina chashana kasa nga pina chashana ini di toba maki ba kasa toba maki we kangsa chire ini ngang chu kasa di大上部地用完那那说一切节要有一切节出个的一切节要有的
一切所说的被节的出个是一切节出个大上部之类完那这哪里那么那么在往哪里送不多啊在大米兰的大家晓得他记得像是米兰人把给要买的送不的哪里那么都是送不的往哪么的他知道大被还在上部里面是现在嘎查被你给要买的是呀别是嘎查的이나 배다 수속이 다 상부지 레오의 수속이 다 상부지 지초 그래도 소로와 근데 땡땡나 보지 요다 용거로와 요다 용거지래 리즈든데 용거지 가 리즈랑 거에는 저게 땡땡 다 상부들이 뭐에는서 멍바나 수속이 용적이 샤와 상부들이 요한가 다 땡땡 레레거로와 레레거지래
이시체나 디거와 이라
디그레스다 수속 이시체는 디그레 배지당 가서 라마 수기 와나나 도스 송구도
하장 대 상보이나 대 가라치아요 말에
그래서 가타요 말에 그 밀란 세워도 배 타지는 게 밖에 요 말에서 메디 바레스 슬라마게 송구도
Yeah, so you can believe in it. So because when you're receiving the initiations, then you have those good sign happens in your dream, then is auspicious. So however, I believe that many teachers when they give initiations or masters when they give initiations, they do mention that even if you have a very good sign appears in your dream, then you shouldn't be too happy about it as well, because it is not real. It is not real.
다 삼부치의 지초그래서 근데 레레네 여르스로와 리즈는 또바 마치 나 간다 다 삼부인데 용다 용초그래서와.
Yeah, so even those who have not developed realizations, they do occasionally have the good sign happen in their dream.
그 가시 그와나디 하 밀라노를 빼 두차 쇼지 든디 빼 밀라 좀바이네야 들라고 라마나바 송구도와 들라 정도 빼 두타고야 든디 케야마 들란 타치딩에 밖에 야 말선 야 디에 송구도와.
Yeah, even those who have when they receive initiations and then they have very bad sign happen in their dreams, then even the Lama they do mention that, I mean, it is not real. Temba Mariwas.
What touchy the 든디 semba 쪼개야 든디 쪼개 케야 말든 타치도 소소 때 템바 케 말에서 송가야 말에서 타치다 따나 레즈레즈 용도 요시고 서로 든디 용고서 가지.
Yeah, so when you have bad dreams, then the Lama do mentions that, I mean, you shouldn't be too sad about it as well. You shouldn't be too sad because it's not real.
Kishla, before we move on, just to clarify and check whether what I understand from what Kishla explained about wrong consciousness and mistaken consciousness, I think it's very important. So wrong consciousness is that we process the information wrongly, incorrectly. Whereas mistaken consciousness is that we, or the knower, mistakenly regard the apprehending object. The object is wrongly seen or understood. Whereas wrong consciousness, the object can be correct, but we wrongly we distort the information. Is that correct?
Sorry, regarding the mistaken consciousness, could you please
the definition that you gave tonight is a knower that they mistake in regard with the appearing object. That means the object appear as when they see, they mistaken it. That means look like more of the eye sense organ sense power punya fault lah. It mistakenly regard the apprehending object, whereas this wrong consciousness is more of the inside. Things are correct inside, enter then inside the brain, it wrongly make a wrong, it process the information incorrectly. More of the inside punya problem, whereas the mistaken one is actually the eye, sometimes distorted or eyesight not good, or you press your eye, then you see something is mistakenly regard the apprehending object. Am I correct?
Also Kishla, ini yang Kishla ye account dishi kya wate kaza lokshe thang tushe ti kola. Ini Kishla account dishi kya wate ini Kishla tanda ya shuje ini Kishla nge ko wate tata yuna di zero nang. Ini kaza tushe na kaza Kishla ye tsengi de shadwa rangi nangyula tuwe sheba de ini di kaza di tushe de. Ini di tushe na yang di pina shasha na yang mangchiwa da nganzo kaza di wangbu sujian ba da wo ini di gyun di tewa ina gyun di shuwa ina ini di kaza tushe de lege res. Ini nganzo lo shi se de ini di wangbu sujian ba de ini di nangda yo mare gyun shu yo mare ini nganzo gi leba se de kongi ini di samlo da na leba tsik di biju tambare. Ini di leba di nganzo kang tong ba ya ne de kang yung wa de ini di kaza samlo tang be ka la ini di taji chi be ka la ini di kaza loba shu wa reza. Ini di kaza nang gi ka ni da bo.
jinse yanda mai ba de wang loba shunu wor kanda.
Yumse yangda mai ba.
jinse yanda mai ba ji wang ge de loba shunu wor kanda. Nganzo pe le kunjo so yo mare se so pe 가시게 준타 년바 왕그 로바 슌도 가시베 준생 년바 왕그 로바 슌도가 니 요로 로바 슌게 아데 로바 슌도지 로바 슌기 된 안소베 준생 안다 마이바지 준생 따나지 따나스나 저 하고 오면 간시 준생 안다 마이바지 토네 때가다 로바 인진도 그래서 거로
양다 따낭 얘기실라
오 준생 따나지 준생 따나지 왕게 따나스나 안다 마이바스 거라 준생 안다 마이바지 어따 든디 왕게 로바 슌도 그래고
지상인이 양디 가서 쪼어된 낭기 강이 되버려. 지가 자디 로시사디.
준세다 만다 요거 로바 시야든다 만다 요거. 라미나서 봐 여러 데.
양 인지민지 양디 가서 양 로시에나 디양 망치와된 낭기 강이 되고 이니디 투시에나 디 망치와한디 추이 견쇼.
가르면 보내 왕시도 저도 나 강에서 느끼게 잡게 말아. 가르면 보내 왕시도 로시로. 동가세보 집 왕시도 저도 데려와 로시로.
Yeah. So regarding the wrong consciousness, yeah. So it engaged wrongly due to incorrect reason. So it engaged wrongly due to incorrect reason. Like for example, due to incorrect reason about the three jewels, then we regard three jewels as non-existent. So in other words, it's due to the facsimile's reason. Due to a facsimile's reason, then we engage wrongly. Like for example, regard three jewels as non-existent. So that is that involves incorrect reason. Then we engage wrongly. So, however, it is not necessarily that it is more the brain process inside then cause the problems, and then we have a wrong consciousness. Then due to more like the external problems like eye sense power faults, then we have a mistaken consciousness because the eye consciousness apprehending, the sense consciousness apprehending snow mountain as blue, it is also a wrong consciousness as well. So sense consciousness apprehending snow mountain as blue, it is a wrong consciousness as well. So similarly to a sense consciousness apprehending a white conch shell as yellow, so that is a wrong consciousness as well.
Excuse me, mistaken. It's a very critical word. Mistaken to me, from where I understand it, is that it is the ignorant mind. Mistaken means that seeing things as not as what they actually is. That should be the definition of mistaken. Seeing things as something else and not as what it is. In other words, like pushing the empty or dependent arising. Seeing things as not dependent arising. Seeing things seeing independent arising as not independent arising, as an example. So that is, I think, very critical. Not a mistaken eye consciousness, not a mistaken hearing, not a mistaken seeing different colors and things like that. That's the way I understand it.
True as I think is la. Ni kuwa ina de true as I think kasa maribe same de reza. Maribe same de reza. Ini yang kasa nguyu nechu maimba chitongwa. Yana di kasa di tuan la maimba ini di chitongwa. Yana di tuan xian la chitongwa. Bina cha shana kasa di tindi imba ini di kasa di tindi maimba di tongwa. Ini di chua reza. Ini di kasa tanang ina ngasu chua se di ini di karingwenbo dabo ina di tushi segi orwa. Ini di kasa kado dabo ina di chipo shegi ingi mari samgi dus.
Didro, di chara la res ko danzi mariba kanga tiki res lo shi res ro.
Tushi yang lo shi ro. Danzi mariba.
O mariba tanda losa kona danzi mariba losa. O mariba tisa sama tawar res tiki res lo shi re.
So yeah, so I say 당신 말을 봐요. 콩디 말을 봐지 보마도 시오 말이 당신.
오, 때 말이 봐와 다 간다 말이 발다 가서 렌데라 모비 말이 봐대 코나니 모비 말이 봐지 밀려 버려. 와. 다 돼서 정말 간다 지지는 그랬어.
냥 록시로. Yeah, so so as you say that the mistaken and is ignorant mind, right? So ignorant that is because ignorance that ignorance that is confused with regard to the suchness, with regard to the karmic cause and effect, they are mistaken. They are mistaken consciousness, and they are wrong consciousness as well. So they are both mistaken and wrong consciousness.
Right, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we had a very good discussion today.
Thank you. That Jemal Topangini in Zinda Jemal the Ligudus Nazo, Rua, Topag material in Zinda Jemal the Ligudus Rua.
Yeah. So next class, I'm going to talk about conceptual consciousness.
Demal some de Nazo, Lori La Sunday, Tenchis Rishi Toba, that Toba the Dikishi Udwa, Jemal Nazin Zinda Dilma, Tia, the channel lot and the Malocious.
Because the Lori la de Sundu ye,
Yena Toba Levuda or Toba Levuda.
Yeah, so next week I'm going to talk about threefold divisions of awareness and knowers. Then it talks about the conceptual consciousness that takes a meaning generality as their apprehended objects. So in this context, here, then we are going to talk about the conceptual thoughts or conceptual consciousness. Yeah, so I'm very happy that you all pay attention to this mistaken consciousness and wrong consciousness, because these two, especially these two, are something that we have to be careful with.
That jail Sinju Sumale with you, Yabu Chanukura. Tanga Singa report solo, Singa report Lojo Tona Mount Tituna. And the Yabushu do Surwa. The Nanju Consacho Mambo Sungura de. The Singa report to Lape, Lojo Mount Chebua.
Yeah, so His Holiness Dalai Lama also mentions the importance of studying the psychology. So when we when in future when we talk about mental factors, then they are related.
Yeah, Sheila, we still have some time. Someone want to ask question? Is it?
Yeah,
now?
it's me, Dr. Go, Caroline here. I want to clarify with Geshe-la. When we mistaken seeing a rope as a snake, is mistaken consciousness?
The taba ni di dui zimba. Taba di dui zimba ni di tushi nas. Yeah, it is a mistaken consciousness.
Geshe-la, may I ask a question?
Okay.
So the example, let's talk about a terrorist who has blown up a building. So is our calling or thinking of this person as a terrorist a mistaken consciousness, but not a wrong consciousness, because it's not wrong because he did in fact blow up the building, but it's mistaken because it's our conventional wisdom. Is it right to think that way?
Sorry, it is a mistaken consciousness and a wrong consciousness.
So when we call a person a terrorist, somebody who has blown up a building, is it right to say that by our calling him a terrorist, we are having a mistaken consciousness because it's just our conventional wisdom that we call him a terrorist, but it's not a wrong consciousness because it's factually concordant. That means he did blow up the building. Is that how to think?
So it is because the terrorists the yang mimang busi wa the yor wa because taju rilam ina
Taju lega penge.
the taju rilam penge da boy na yang kangba jik ini the to chares ini the because bomb the shaje ini the to chares ini the ngangchu ini the taju rilam penge yimba the because ming di da wa ina明的大劫，因为的拿出去写把的推卸人，推卸因为咁先，因为的可是让可是的可是几点嘅出去，因为的 지den기 추기 ini di ming di tagi ora mi di tajuri lam di chigi ona ini di tajuri lam penge di res ini ngangso gi shewa di lokshi mares tushi re de ini di lokshi mares kain sin di twendan tu mares dinde yin ngangso dinde samlo tangdang ina di tata yunas
chachi ngenba da kanda khambala diso tawni diso tachi barwa da kanda trapo mera chini
tajo ba ming de tawa ina ming de
kusola
tawa kongso la ming de tawa che ini ngangso gi sheba de ngangso ming ta be sheba de tushi res lokshi mares dinde inas
ale da khona de tachi nzin dige de ngone ne so tachi trapo chenke de tachi ban nzin dige de ngaso lo tantir da
kaza tushi na tambo
fishe mai sen da ngos thoya jo ngaso tachi jiba ngos thonggo ra ko mi ngos thoa de mi ngos thone de ko tishi ike lagu marwa da tachi ban nzin ke toba yorwa tachi ba yin ban nzin ke toba de tishi yin lagu shwa
kaza tajo ba
tachi ba yin ban nzin ke tachi ba ngone jiora ko tachi ba ngone de ta kanza tachi ba ji su sama pe ngone se ke ta ko trapo le ga chine tachi ba nzin ke toba de tishi re de ina ko de ro tishi re de ko ina lo tan di cha de ko ro
toba tundi ro
다 다치바다 ngone yimba zingo ro to pati
tajo ba yimba zimbe toba de ini de toba tundi re ini yang tushi re
o tishire ta tishi lo wa to barwa
kaisi toba ina de sama de tushi ro ini de loshe marwa ijla
ta loshe mar to ba tanti sana loshe ro ya ko yo mare nga so lo tanti la loshe ro ya yo marwa
toba tundi ina de tushi re ini yang loshe mare
다 맞아 무슨 미기 무슨 잡고 제가 미기 무슨 통바데 된 통바데 다 간다
롱팅 강 잡고 있는 디 통기요나
안시 무슨 통하데
TV 잡고 있는 디 통기요나 되기를 네 상주바라고
다 TV 나라데서 야 맞아 뇌에서 이나 미나 하고 말와 뇌에서 그러고 통해 저 지여봐 이나 다 된거 미식 무슨 통선나 다데 원시 배 로시다 주식 갖게 말하고 뇌에서 그러 미 녀서 자제바 제반 만 제반 통수나 미 통수나 대응원숭이 통고래다 롱원숭래 단도데 롱원숭래 로시에 말이 티시에 말이 스로와
로시아 말이 투시아 말이
다 자제바 마이바 징갈 마이바 지라 코 자제바레스나 덴디게 인진스나 대도바 대다 로시다 티시니가래
공다 계실라 근데 다주 가사티 다주 바이네 딩군수 통
마인케 간사 지어와 다포 징케 마인바 두솔라 코 다포 징케 레스는 진바이나 다포 징케 레스는 니 다포 제바 지스나 데 간다 로시 차고다 또바이나 로시레 들어와
이니 단단히 디 미시 데니 로시 말이 투시 말와 있라
말이 자주 다포 제바 무슨 미시가 동그러와
미시에는 디 단단히 또바 말와 있라
미시 또바 말해서 미시 응어서 통 잡봉어서 제네게 망어서 제네게 미시 응어서 동그러 와. 데 또바 말해 주시 말해 원송래서 미시.
그래서 주시 말이
그 미시 응어서 동그러라고 비게 잡고 제방 망 쉬는 거 응어서 동그러라 그 감바도
또바 말이 이제 주시야 말와.
그 또바 말해 주시 말해 원송라고. 땡월로 원송라고.
yes. Yeah, so when we when we see when we generate a eye consciousness that directly sees the terrorist is doing the blowing up the buildings, then that is not a conceptual consciousness, that is not a mistaken consciousness, because it is a direct perceiver, a directly perceiving awareness. So when we have the conceptual consciousness apprehending the terrorist as terrorist, so it is a factually concordant conceptual consciousness. Since it is a factually concordant conceptual consciousness, it is a mistaken consciousness because it is a conceptual consciousness. And being a factually concordant conceptual consciousness, then it is not a wrong consciousness because it is factually concordant. Yeah, so I repeat the second part. So the conceptual consciousness apprehending a terrorist as terrorist. So that conceptual consciousness is a factually concordant conceptual consciousness. And this factually concordant conceptual consciousness is a mistaken consciousness because it is a consciousness. Because it is a conceptual consciousness. Sorry, and same factually concordant conceptual consciousness is not a wrong consciousness because it is factually concordant. So if you if we have a conceptual consciousness apprehend non-terrorist as terrorist, then it becomes a wrong consciousness.
Thank you.
Sheila,
Thank you. That is
got one more. Just one line above. Can you show one line above? Because what Geshe-la have just Geshe-la said, Geshe-la, above this line, however, we say that for the person who is dreaming, there is a factually concordant sense consciousness. This is mentioned under wrong consciousness. But Geshe-la just mentioned that all factually concordant consciousness are wrong consciousness. Am I seeing the contradiction there?
Geshe-la, tanda ini di kasa toba tundu ini di lokshe marwas.
Mari.
Toba tundu ini di lokshe maris. Ini yang di picham di nanglo la di sigi doa milam la nebe kangsa de ngola kasa wangshi tundu res. Ini tanda ini di kasa di giwa dogo rewe kaisina toba tundu di lokshe mari. Ini di tanda ini di lokshe shibi kala. Ini yang ini di yang toba tundu kasa di tundu wangshi resa. Oh, yeah. So when we say sense consciousness, then it's not a conceptual consciousness anymore. Yeah. Being whatever is a sense consciousness is necessarily a non-conceptual consciousness.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So I will stop here.
That thing as a gaze or dilatini, Jetemba Jiva and Roa Deva. The Ganda and Zalin de la Mantuta Miguel Soba, Tida Mayumbata, then Juanshi Nebala Soba Tida Padoya, that and then Niantepa, and New the Tragi, and one or Chisra.
Yeah, so we conclude with dedication. We dedicate the roots of virtue accumulated, especially through this Dharma teaching session. May it be the complete cause for Buddha Dharma to flourish to all 10 directions, and for all sentient beings to have excellent happiness. We also dedicate these roots of virtue for the world peace, and may happiness prevail the world. May the world be free of disaster, such as the disaster caused by the imbalance of 4 elements, such as flood, famine, etc. And we also dedicate these roots of virtue for this pandemic, wars, conflicts to cease immediately.
Dagi Jenny Zabi Gawan, the Tindandro, Gwilla, Gambeda, Chiba, Jitze, Losandra, Baye, Timbi, Nimbori, Dose, Yo, Chanjo, Senor, Rimboje, Maji, Panaji, Jiva, Yamba, Mebaya, Gunia, Gondo, Peva, Yo, and Jabe, Baye, Jidan, Chimba, Kundo, Zambia, digging the Jisodal, Gawan, the Tanjera, Tony Tower, Rimboje, Maji, Panaji, Jiba, Yamba, Mebaya, Gunia, Gondo, Peva, Yo, Tower, Rimboje, Maji, Panaji. 제바 냥바 메바야 공내 공도 배워 아주 투선 창계 장계 자에 된지죠 배 그래서 도모의 초소 그 예내면 또저배 다소 되게 된도 자대 요 돈이 ninje 순동 주배라 취재 산재 강제 진등의 차나 배모 딘지 장소 소원 내조 인데 련도 요 인지된 강단 변대 말에 봐 강내주야 상배 위원의 거리 중에 딘지 장소 소원 내조 인데 련도 요 강러라의 고유 신간의 변다 대와 말린주의 지레조와 딘지 장소의 협의 신디 봐도 딘주지 Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kishala.